Hello and welcome again, cyber students, to part 2. Let's keep it moving. We are on number 11. If you want to follow along and you want to do it by hand, print out this test because we're going to go through the entire thing in 8 parts. So the best thing for you to do is go down to the description box, click on the link, do it on your iPad, print it out, whatever you want to do, but follow along however you can. Take notes, take screenshots. Let's go. Okay, number 11. Mutations can be beneficial to species because do you know what mutations are? Do you know that mutations, they're talking about the DNA strand? Do you know that your DNA strand or a DNA strand of an organism can change to benefit for its survival? Okay, so let's take a look at the answers. Number 1, can lead to some members of a species having favorable traits in a changing environment. Notice how I highlighted mutations and beneficial. Beneficial means good. It means good. It means that the organism can survive. So number 1 is looking pretty good. Let's take a look at number 2. Allow organisms to mate with other species. No. This is incorrect. Will lead to the loss of traits that are helpful in a specific environment. That's not specific to the question. Cause the reproductive rate of a species to decrease. That does not happen. So let me just clear this up a bit. Not make it so messy. But let's just kind of break down the question. So a mutation is when when a section or genes in your DNA change. And this one's talking about a good aspect of it. Good. When is a DNA mutation good for a species to survive? And then the only time that a DNA is good is when it leads to a member of a species having favorable, good traits that will help it survive its environment. So the best answer for number 11 is choice 1. Now, here we have, I have a quick picture of an evolutionary trait of or process of horses. So we found in fossil records, because this is how we know things are real, because we found the skeletal remains of animals that are related or of the same species as current animals. So did you know that horses used to be the size of dogs or chihuahuas? And over time, DNA kept mutating and the animals kept changing over time. Now, this is millions of years after. This isn't like 1 year to the next. This is millions of years after. And now with selective breeding, also, us making sure that certain horses breed with each other for race horses or horses that are in competition. Now we have the horses that we know, modern horses that we know today that are large, that are race horses, show horses, whatever the case may be. So there was DNA mutation here, and a lot of this DNA mutation was to make sure that the genes of these animals help it survive its changing environment. Because as you know, as millions of years pass on Earth, the environment changes. Okay, let's take a look at 12. So we're going to have another example of DNA mutation here, of when it's a good thing for the organism. Number 12. Within 10 years after the introduction of a new mosquito spray, okay, so let's highlight this real quick. Very few of the descendants of the targeted mosquito population were killed by the usual dose of the spray. The best explanation for this is that, okay, so when you spray a specific insect with a specific poison, what can happen to the next generation is that it can become what we call resistant. Resistant means that the spray will no longer work for the new baby mosquitoes, the next generation. It will not work. the poison will not work. It is resistant. Okay? So that is another vocabulary word that you should definitely know. So let's see choice 1. Ingesting the spray caused the mosquitoes to become resistant to it. So no, you don't become resistant within yourself. You're passing on genes to the next generation to make the next generation resistant. So it's definitely not one. The spray polluted the water in which the mosquitoes deposited their eggs. So you can't transfer DNA from water to eggs. That's not how it works. The spray killed organisms that cause disease in mosquitoes. That is not accurate. That's not answering the question. 4, existing variations in the mosquitoes population provided resistance to the spray. This is the correct answer. So the variation that you have within a species will help for its survival. So here's an example, okay? Now, this isn't mosquitoes, this is bacteria, but we're going to use the same concept. So let's say that this is bacteria that causes strep throat. Have you ever had strep? Your throat hurts, you're coughing up a storm, you have a fever, and in order to cure yourself from strep, you take antibiotics. Let me just increase this a little bit more. Okay, so you take the antibiotics, right? And then they start dying. They start dying. But hold up, there's one little guy that still lives, that is resistant to the antibiotic. So the antibiotic does not work for this one bacteria. Why? Because there's something in the DNA of this bacteria that does not let the antibiotic kill this specific bacteria. It is resistant. So what happens? So all of these die, but this survives. And how does bacteria reproduce? So if you have a bacteria and it's going to reproduce, it reproduces by asexual reproduction. Do you remember how many parents involve asexual? Asexual, you only need one parent. So this bacteria is going to reproduce by itself, and this process is called mitosis. So the resistant bacteria will make 2 new resistant babies. The next generation, okay, is going to be resistant to the antibiotic. So then what happens? So then they start growing and growing, mitosis, asexual reproduction. So then if you use the same antibiotic, they're just going to keep growing. They're just going to keep growing because it is resistant to this antibiotic and it will not die. So the same aspect goes to the mosquito. There was a mosquito, and then mosquito. And then they came in with the poison, killed off. Uh-oh, we can't kill this one. Why? Because the DNA in this mosquito, it makes it resistant to the poison, so then its offspring is going to survive the poison. You will absolutely find a question checking to see if you understand how are organisms resistant to poisons or to antibiotics or medication. So this is a very, very important question, and also high level. Like, you need to know your stuff. You need to know what the word resistant means. You need to know mitosis. You need to know asexual reproduction to answer this multiple choice question. All right, let's take a look at number 13. Once implanted into a recipient, bioengineered blood vessels made from a plastic-like material become covered with the recipient's own cells. Okay, do you know what bioengineered is? So bioengineers are people who make medical technology, so artificial organs, but I think we're still discovering how to make artificial organs. There's this thing where we're doing 3D printing of organs and skin cells for victims of a fire that needs skin grafts. But I want to focus on something that you know for a fact. Now, patients who have had amputations of their arms, these bioengineers, they make these artificial arms to help the person move on with their lives, where they can actually still have use of their arm, to avoid needing someone's help. So this making a prosthetic is an example of what a bioengineer does. Now, in this question, this specific bioengineer made blood vessels from plastic-like material, and then the body seems to recover and make their own cells, and it regenerates a blood vessel. Now, I don't know if this is true. Sometimes in these Regents questions, they have a source. I'm sure you bumped into that in the previous video, where there was a question about something, and then there was a source of a study, and then they put the source in the question, but this one doesn't have a source. So let's see what it's trying to ask. So one of the things you have to make sure you do, as I said before, you have to make sure that you understand what is it asking, what is it looking for. Okay, so let's see. An advantage of using these bioengineered vessels is that, okay, so they're asking, why is it good to use these bioengineered vessels? Let's take a look. They contain antibodies that will block an immune response. No, they don't contain an antibody. Antibody is a protein. This is not what we're talking about. It's irrelevant to the question. And antibodies fight disease. We're talking about blood vessels to recover some part of the cardiovascular system. 2, viruses and bacteria will not infect the cells on these blood vessels. That's not true. A cell is a cell is a cell. So any cell can be invaded by a pathogenic bacteria or a virus. That's what they do. They invade your cells. Viruses go in. So if your cells regenerate and you have cells, they will absolutely still infect it. Choice 3, they do not trigger an immune response. Now, this might be the answer, because a great thing about regrowing your own cells is that your body won't recognize it as a foreign object. So then your immune system won't try to kill what your body just grew. So this right here is an example of a question where you need to know about organ transplant and how the body can reject this if you don't take a specific kind of medication. Do you know the specific kind of medication, what it's called? Immune suppressants. So if you get a kidney transplant, that kidney did not come from your body. It came from someone else's body. Now, they have to make sure that it's a match, that it matches your specific blood type, your specific body communication, your receptors. It has to match. It has to be a match. You can't just take a kidney from just anyone. And when they transplant it into your body, there's a chance that even though it's going to be a match for you, there can be a chance that your body rejects the organ. And in order for your body to keep the organ, you need to take medication to suppress the immune system. Now, this is the same concept. Someone made a plastic-like material so that you can regenerate and make a new blood vessels from your own cells. If it's your own cells, your body won't attack your own cells. Well, we hope not. So number 3 is looking good, but let's take a look at 4. The engineered blood vessels can be inherited by future generations. No. So this is another part of the question that you need to know. The only cells that you can give to your babies, the only DNA that you can give to your babies is in your sex cells, in your gametes. So in eggs and sperm, these are the only cells that have DNA that you pass and trace that you pass on to your offspring. Not blood vessel cells, not skin cells, not muscle cells. Egg, sperm cells have the DNA for sexual reproduction for you to pass on your genes to the next generation. So for 13, the best answer was number 3. It does not trigger an immune response. Okay, let's move on. So we're now on page 4 on the January 2023 exam. Sorry, January 2024 exam. So let's take a look at number 14. So this is a very important topic that you also need to know. Again, take notes if you need to. Start making some flashcards for these vocabulary words. Receptor molecules. Receptor molecules are chemicals such as hormones that communicate with your cells, specifically really all of your cells, but this question is very specific to your nerve cells. So let's take a look and see what this question is asking. Number 14. Unlike telephone messages that pass over the telephone wires, messages between parts of the body are carried by a series of nerve cells that are not in direct contact with each other. Communication between two nerve cells is represented in the diagram below. Okay, so here's nerve cell number 1. Here's nerve cell number 2. Okay, so here we have these little dots, right? These little dots are the chemicals that help cell 1 communicate to cell 2. Notice how they're very particular in shape. This is a circle, and it fits very well in the receptor of this other cell. So let's just talk about some anatomy here, okay? So this right here is called, let me just zoom in here real quick. This is a nerve cell, right? What do you think this is? Just so that we're on the same page. What is that? That is a nucleus. What is in a nucleus? DNA. Is it relevant to what we're doing? No, but I just want to make sure you understand what you're looking at. Excuse me. Because what I've said before is whenever you have a picture, you have to understand what you're looking at. What are you looking at right now? You're looking at nerve cells, okay, that tell us that, but this looks like bones, Miss T. What are we looking at? Nerve cells are very specialized cells that are part of your nervous system. They're not going to look like your skin cells. Your skin cells are different. So that's your nucleus. This is your cell membrane. This is a very specific part of the nerve cell. But on the cell membrane, you have something called receptors, and these receive the information. So they receive the chemical. Okay, now receptor molecules are the dots, and these dots represents the chemical, and usually the chemicals are things called hormones. So let's see what the question is asking. Which statement best explains how the message is delivered, even though these cells are not physically connected with each other? Okay, let's take a look at choice 1. Let me zoom in a little bit more. The cells communicate with the use of chemical messages between them. Yes, they do. And those chemical messages are called hormones. So this is looking good. Number 2, the cells send messages by direct contact with other types of cells. Does not have direct contact. Nutrients are the primary means of communication. Nope, hormones are. 4, ribosomes move out of one nerve cell. That's not fair. That's not fair. Because when we look at an animal cell, ribosomes represent a dot on a cell. And I'm going to show you a picture in a minute. But they look like dots. And these look like dots. So it's a trick question. So it's not ribosomes that are moving in and out. It's the hormone that's moving in and out. So for 14, the best answer was choice number 1. Okay. Number 15, I'm kind of surprised that this is not in part D. Part D of the exam, as you'll see in the future videos that I make, literally the last video, part 8, is going to be part D. That is where you find all of the lab questions, but sometimes they kind of sneak in here, just trying to get you to remember the concepts behind the labs that you did. So let's take a look at number 15. This is about salt, okay? So we're going to talk about it, but let's read number 15. A saltwater aquarium contained a variety of saltwater fish. Okay, so when you have a big question like this, meaning a kind of a lot to read than normal. Usually Regents questions aren't that long, but this one's it's a lot. Do whatever it takes for you to stay focused, not fall asleep. So if you have to draw the aquarium, draw the symbols, draw whatever it is that you need, get scrap paper, because you will lose it. This is a 3-hour exam and it's so much reading. And when you get to this type of question, you might start giving up. You might start saying, oh my gosh, this is so much reading. Do you ever read something and it doesn't sit in your head? You just can't, it just doesn't register and you read it over and over again? Well, when you annotate or draw pictures or symbols, you need to stay on track. And if you ever find yourself reading something over and over again, ask to go to the bathroom, wash your face, drink some water, get a quick snack, and then come back. Okay, so let's that's just something really important that I wanted to say. So let's just start over. A saltwater aquarium. So I'm going to highlight saltwater aquarium. Contained a variety of saltwater fish. Okay, saltwater fish. Got it. And plants. Okay, so there's also saltwater plants there too. Members of a species of small fish from a freshwater stream. Okay, actually, let me change this color because there's 2 different types of things going on here. Freshwater stream. Okay, so they're introducing species, small fish from a freshwater stream, were accidentally added to the saltwater tank. Whoops. Within an hour, all of the fish that were added were dead. No, which ones were dead? So the freshwater fish died when they were put in the salt water. Okay. While the saltwater fish were still healthy, of course, they're in their normal habitat. The freshwater fish most likely died because of, before we look at the answers, do you know what you're looking at right now? Do you see this picture? So what is this? What is this a picture of? Do you remember? If you said onion cells, you are correct. Red onion cells to be exact. I mean, they look purple, but we call them red onion cells. Listen to me. This is why it's so important that you did all those 4 labs. This is diffusion through a membrane. It was a little stinky lab because the onion smelled after a while. But you took onion, a specific layer of onion. You made a wet mount cell, and then you observed this. And this is 1 onion cell. You observed it. Okay, this is perfectly fine. Then what did you do? You took salt solution and you added it to the slide on the side with a specific technique, which, you know, I talk about on my online class. So when you add salt to the onion cell, something very specific happens. The salt diffuses into the onion cell, okay? And in order for the salt to fit in the onion cell, water has to diffuse out. So water diffuses out. Okay? So water is diffusing out and salt is going in. What do you think is going to happen? So this is what you should have observed. So the cell membrane shrank, because remember the outermost part is the cell wall. Then it shrank. The cytoplasm shrank, the cell membrane shrank. Okay? It shriveled up. It got dehydrated because water diffused out, went from high concentration to low concentration. And the salt diffused in from high concentration on the outside to low concentration. Diffusion is the movement of molecules from high concentration to low concentration. I talk about that very specifically on my online class. Check out the website, the link below in the description box for a full lesson. But basically, this is what happened. Whenever you take something that is in fresh water and you put that organism in salt water, this is what happens to their cells. They lose the water and they die. So let's take a look at the answers. Number 1. Okay, so let's just remind ourselves what it's asking for. Within an hour, all of the fish were dead. Yeah, okay. The freshwater fish most likely died, so it's asking why did they die? Let's see, number 1. Became severely dehydrated due to the process of diffusion. Yes. Do I even need to read more? Let's just in case. 2, swelled up and died. Nope. 3, had no freshwater organisms to eat that doesn't even make sense. I'm not even going to finish reading that. Ate all of the plants in the tank. So don't these answers seem so silly once you know what biologically and scientifically is going on? Isn't this silly? It's almost like, now that you know the information, it's like, are you mocking me? Do you think I'm dumb? Like, no, you know what's going on scientifically, so you got this. Okay, let's move on to number 16. An energy pyramid containing green plants and other organisms from a food chain is represented below. Okay, so here we have an energy pyramid. Before we even look at this energy pyramid, you need to know the levels and what they represent and why it's big at the bottom and small at the top. Why is it a triangle? So, of course, I got a picture for you. Okay, so in our ecosystem, in Earth, where do we get our energy from? I heard you. I literally heard you. From the sun. We get our energy from the sun, everyone. My beautiful cyber students. Massive amounts of energy, solar energy, come onto the Earth. The very first living organisms that absorb that large quantity of energy are producers, autotrophs. What are producers and autotrophs? Plants and any other autotrophic organism that goes through the process of photosynthesis. Then the next level, the energy is lost in heat, moving up. And what eats plants? Herbivores. Okay, these could be insects, these could be small animals, this could be large animals like cows and deer. And then what is going to eat these animals? Carnivores. And as you go up, the energy is lost by heat and energy transfer. When you get to the top of the pyramid, you're going to have lost a large amount of energy in comparison to the beginning, where the energy came mostly from solar energy. So high energy moving up to lower energy, and then you have producers, herbivores, carnivores, and then top predators. Now, I'm sorry for that pause. I was just trying to remember what we call the different levels of carnivores, like secondary carnivores, tertiary carnivores, because let's say that an oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Let's say that a bird eats an insect. The bird is a carnivore, but some other bird or some other animal can eat that bird. Have you ever seen cats like eating birds? They catch them and they eat them. So that's a secondary carnivore. Okay, so I just want to make that point. So now that we reviewed on the energy pyramid with my stuttering, so sorry about that. I'm not editing that out. It takes too much time. We gotta study for Friday's test. So now that we know, let's go ahead and read the question. Herbivores would most likely be located. What are herbivores? They're animals that eat organisms that eat plants. Remember, the first one is autotrophs, the second layer is herbivores, and third layer up is carnivores. So this one was easy once you know the info, of course. The best answer for 16 is 2, level 2 only, not level 1. Level 1 is autotrophs, producers. Level 3 are carnivores. That's not it. Level 1 and 2 is correct, but it's not level 1 at all, and 2. So the best answer is only level 2. Let's move on to number 17. Oh, look at this cutie pie. Let me just draw the mouth a little bit more. Oh, look at this cutie pie. So let's take a look at this question, 17. Okay. The axolotl, also known as the Mexican walking fish, can regenerate parts of its body, such as a leg or tail. What is regenerate? Whenever I highlight these words, please don't ever be ashamed of not knowing what they are. A lot of times we don't know simple words or what we quote unquote think is supposed to be simple, and we just forget the meaning. What is regenerate? Regenerate is to make new. So make new parts. So one of the first types of organisms that people think about when animals regenerate is like lizards. When they lose their tail, they grow their tail back. Or certain types of worms, you cut them and then they become 2 different organisms. So regeneration is making a new part. Okay, so this cutie pie over here, let's make it even more sad with eyebrows, regenerates. So let's see what it's, see how there's a source here of where it's the information is coming from. So let's take a look at the question, know your vocabulary. The regeneration of these parts involves a process of, so this is why I put know your vocabulary. You need to know what biotechnology is. You need to know what selective breeding is. You need to know what mitotic cell division is. And you need to know what fertilization is. I am so sorry, but this is a question that you either know it or you don't know it. So if you know it, if you cut yourself, break a bone, lose a finger, let me not get dramatic here. Let's focus on a cut. When you cut yourself, your body heals it. You need to make new cells. Whenever you make new cells, that is by the process of mitosis. Mitosis is when when you have a cell, whenever that dot is in the middle, that's a nucleus, becomes 2. It divides to make 2 new cells. This is growth. This is development. This is healing. Now, for animals like this cutie pie, the regeneration is happening because of mitotic cell division. Mitotic is also known as mitosis. Okay? Biotechnology we spoke about before. That's people who make technology in the field of medicine to make the lives of humans better or other organisms. So it's not biotechnology. We're not gonna grow a new, part in the lab and attach it to this animal. It's not selective breeding. Selective breeding is taking 2 organisms, with desirable traits and having them breed to make an offspring that will hopefully have those desirable traits. Like when you breed dogs together and you want to make a specific dog, when you breed horses together and you're hoping two fast horses together and you're hoping that the offspring is going to be fast, that is selective breeding. That's not what's happening here. Fertilization is when the sperm and egg meet. That is not what's happening here. What's happening here is regeneration, which is growth and repair, and that happens with mitosis. And I have a picture here of just cell division. You have your cell, and after specific steps, you end up with two daughter cells with the same amount of DNA. So if you started with 2 with the parent cell, you're going to end with 2 with the daughter cells, because you don't want a mutation. All right, let's move on to number 18. We're getting close to the end. Which would most likely control an insect pest and be the least harmful to the environment? Okay, so we spoke about poisons and antibiotics and how things work. But the problem is that poisons, insecticides, and, it can be harmful to the environment and harmful to other organisms. It's poison. So it's asking which is the least harmful way to get rid of an insect pest. Now, this you need to know, and you need to have studied human impact on the ecosystem. Okay, so let's see choice 1. Eliminating the plants that the insect pests feed on. Now, eliminating the plants is not good. You don't want to disturb the environment. Number 2, use traps baited with sex hormones that attract the insect pests. This could be a good thing to do. You're not disrupting the ecosystem this way. You're just trying to bait it for it to leave the area. Releasing important insects that prey on the insect pests is not good. Imported insects, this is what's called invasive species. Excuse me? You cannot take an animal or an organism that does not belong in that organism and introduce it into a new ecosystem. It can overcome, it can destroy the food web and food chain. It can overproduce and take over the whole area. You cannot bring invasive species into a new ecosystem. So this is actually a really harmful way. Spraying areas with insecticide, absolutely not. That is the worst thing you could do. So the best answer for number 1 is choice 2. For question 18 is choice 2. All right, number 19. Which statement concerning the functioning of cells is correct? Let's take a look. Okay, so here I wrote a note. You need to know your cell organelles. Okay, and I got the classic picture that you probably seen from my previous videos. Now, this is also a full, complete lesson on my online class if you need a full review. But let's review right now a little bit. This is first of all, is this an animal or a plant cell? This is an animal cell, okay? Whenever I ask questions, pause the video and try to remember, because you need to know these things. Is this a eukaryotic cell or prokaryotic cell? It's a eukaryotic cell. It's a large cell. It has organelles, okay? So we know that this is an animal cell, so let's start naming these things. What are the parts? C, the outermost layer, is the cell membrane. D is pointing to the space between. That's the cytoplasm. A is pointing to some kind of bubble here. And this bubble should be the vacuole, which stores water, food, and waste. B is pointing to the nucleus. These little dots are the ribosomes, which make proteins. This right here, do you know what that is? Pause the video. Think about it. Mitochondria. What does mitochondria do? Pause the video. Make ATP energy. Okay? So let's take a look at what the answers are. So it's saying which one is correct. This is basically straight up asking you, and this is, again, I'm not making these questions up. This is from an old exam, the most recent one that was given January 2024. I haven't seen a question like this asking straightforward knowledge as opposed to their storytelling from previous questions. So let's take a look. Mitochondria transfer energy from organic compounds to form ATP. Yes, mitochondria and ATP. This looks correct. Vacuoles are the site of DNA. No, the nucleus is. The nucleus stores genes that will later be removed from the cell. No, DNA, this one was a tricky one. DNA cannot leave the nucleus. DNA needs to stay in the nucleus to help control all cell activity. 4, the cell membrane prevents the diffusion of all poisons into a cell. Nope. That's incorrect because the cell membrane controls what enters and leaves a cell, but it doesn't choose, oh, this is good, this is bad, this is poison, this is arsenic. Like, no. If the chemical or the compound is small enough to fit through the cell membrane, it will go through. It will go through. So cell membranes do not have a mind of their own. They just have a specific mechanism. So the best and correct answer for number 19 is choice 1. Mitochondria make ATP from organic compounds. All right, we are on page 5 of this January 2024 exam. And let's answer our last question of the video, which is number 20. Number 20, you will absolutely get a question on ecological succession. Again, from all of these videos, write down these vocabulary words because they're key items to help you understand and answer these questions. Okay, let's get started. The photograph below shows the results of a deadly wildfire in California in 2018. What is most likely expected to occur to this ecosystem in the future? This, they're saying that this was because of a wildfire. Okay, so let's take a look at this diagram here. You should have studied ecological succession. Primary ecological succession is just when you have an area like this, and over many, many years, it becomes a lush and gorgeous forest or whatever kind of biome it's going to be. This one is called secondary succession. You don't really need to know that, okay? You don't need to know the differences between the two. I'm just kind of putting context out there so you can understand where I'm going with this. Okay. If you already have a lush forest and there's a forest fire, and then you get what looks to be, a horrible destroyed forest in this picture, eventually, over time, you are going to get a regrowth of life back, okay, of the forest back. Because even though the fire happened, you are still going to have what's called pioneer species. Pioneer species are organisms like plants and microbiome, bacteria and plants and specific seeds, and the birds coming back and dropping their poop filled with seeds from other parts of the land, and they start growing. So after a while, it starts growing back, and then years and years pass, and then you're going to have your climax, your best forest, mature oak and hickory tree over 150 years. So it's not going to happen overnight, but eventually it does come back after fire. So let's see what's the best answer. What is most likely expected to occur to this ecosystem in the future? Let's see choice 1. The ecosystem will eventually restore itself, but will be very different from the original. That's incorrect. It's not going to be very different from the original because you have your pioneer species that's going to try to bring back a very, very similar forest or ecosystem. Okay, the ecosystem will eventually restore itself and will be similar to the original. Yes, that seems to be the answer, but let's keep going. The ecosystem will be completely reestablished after 6 months. Absolutely not. Let me just make this bigger. Sorry about that. Number 4, choice 4, the ecosystem will be unable to reach a state of stability again. No, it definitely does. It just takes time. So the best answer for 20 is 2. All right. So we are at the end of this video. Remember that if you need more than just these videos, I highly suggest my online class. You'll find the link in the bio. Message me if you need any help. Message me on Instagram. If you message me on Instagram, I answer very quickly because that's an easier way to get back to you than email or, the comment sections. So let's move on to part 3. Let's keep it moving.